Now.
Yeah, it looks like it's working. I see the red light blinking.
So, hello, Joanna. Hi,
Hi,
and welcome
thank
to
you.
the fireside. I have got there is a fire over there today, but it's not turned on. But we are looking forward. I am looking forward to having a conversation with you and hearing a little bit about your journey so far as a projector, as a splenic projector.
As you.
Same as me, split definition, and you're a 2-4 profile, aren't you?
Yes.
Great. So, how are you doing, first of all?
Good. I was a bit nervous. I took a bath this morning and had like around 3 hours of really arriving into the day, and it was a lovely morning. I woke up with a sore throat, so I'm drinking a lot of tea and preparing for winter, I guess.
Yeah, it's certainly the end of autumn here in England. There was frost on the roof of the boat, so some of the ropes were frozen this morning. But now I'm trying a slightly new setup today. So Pascal's not on the call. Raluca is going to jump up and down and wave at me if I'm making any strange sounds, so we can make sure that it's good quality. But whereabouts are you? Go ahead, Raluca.
Now there's that sound again.
How about right now?
Now it's okay, but then sometimes it feels like something. It's
like a click.
Yeah, like
I think I need a new headset. Well, just let me know if it becomes an issue, and then we can try something different.
Okay, let's see how this goes.
Let's give it a go. So whereabouts are you right now, Joanna?
I'm in Bern, Switzerland right now. I will work here until Christmas on the Christmas market with my father, and then I go back to Austria, where I'm living.
Is Bern the place that has that like a ferry on a wire that goes across the river?
No ferry. It's a very small river.
Okay.
But it looks from up. It looks like a tongue. Like the river really goes around the city.
Right. Okay. That's the same as where I'm in Bath.
Yeah. So it's very pretty. I've always liked places where there was water around. Just like having this flowing. It was very important to me. I grew up near a river, and yeah, I like it. I need water.
Yeah, well, I like water too, so it's cool.
Obviously.
Yeah. So how did you first come across human design, or how did human design find you? And did you jump straight in, or did you take your time getting into it, or come and go a few times? Like, how was it when you first encountered human design?
Well, I think it's about 1.5 years ago when a friend mentioned that she came across a system, but I've never really looked it up. And then we were having a very intense communication. And then she was, I think it was in March, beginning of March this year, when she came to me and was like, yeah, human design, we've talked about it before, and I'm a projector. You should definitely go and check your profile out. And in March it all started. I found out that I'm a splenic projector, that there is only a few of us, and I've started to check the profile of my partner, who is also a splenic projector.
Right.
But basically the rest of my family, all are generators and manifesting generators, like my mom and my sisters. I still haven't done the profiles of my father and my stepfather because it wasn't important enough, because I have a stronger bond with my mom and my sisters. But it was very interesting, and also thinking about friends and what they could be, and starting to feel into the different feelings which different types have.
So that's a really interesting way. It's a really nice way to put it. The different feelings that the different types have, and I mean, I guess when I'd love to explore that, but I just wanted to say first, I think that a lot of projectors, like when we first discover, you know, we're a projector, then, I mean, I'm in a family of 5 other manifesting generators, so
Yeah.
I'm the one projector amongst 6. So that sounds a little bit similar to your setup. And then we hear people are like, oh yeah, my partner's a projector too, and then we've got a reflector and a manifester, and they've got like all different types around them. So
Yeah.
it's going to be very, very interesting how those different families are going to work.
Yeah.
How do you feel different around the other types? We haven't talked about that with anyone yet, so it's a really interesting topic. Like when you're, you know, around a projector or a manifestor or a generator, like how is it?
I think it always depends how much self they already have, how much awareness they have about their personality. Because if it's an projector, usually they know that we all need the recognition. It's like about you with Raluca in the call. I was seeing your interview, and there you really see that you both recognized each other and you recognized her talents, and that's something with self-aware projectors, which I really see that we know what we both need, and we are really willing to give that to each other to really uplift that and encourage that growth within a personality. But it was very interesting for me. Like I started to read about the profiles and everything, and my partner has kids, 2 girls. 3 days a week they stay with us, and for me, I was 100% sure that one of them is a projector and one of them must be a generator. And when I've looked up their profiles, it was so impressive to see that. And the interesting thing is also that the younger one, which is a projector, she breaches my split definition. So, and when I'm with her, I really feel this melting, this really like letting go within each other, which is very, very beautiful. And I think I haven't really like being aware of people who feel that split definition. But with her, I really, really feel it. It's such a deep melting. It's very beautiful.
Cool. So so you have a lot of projectors in your life. You've got a lot of projectors
Like
around you.
recently, yeah, it's recently. Like I've met my partner 1.5 years back, and this is also when his daughter came into my life. And I have like 1 or 2 friends who are projectors, but most of them aren't. But yeah, recently I started to have like very present projectors in my life. Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, to imagine like what happens when, you know, 2 projectors meet, and we have this thing of like, you're a projector. I thought I had a feeling about that, or, you know, and then there's this thing of like, you know, I see you, you see me, or not, you know, it doesn't always happen, of course. But there's this like, I see you. And then of course, you know, I don't know about you, but my experience is usually we're like, okay, well, let's wait around for some energy to show up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks, Raluca. So let's wait for some energy to show up and see what happens. But you know, we have lots in common. But then I wonder as well, like, you know, if 2 people are generators, it's not really such a big deal, is it? If 2 people are generators and they meet each other, oh yeah, you're a generator as well, because they're 70%, you know, and it's not so unusual. And also, I think that you know, the world has. I mean, the setup is you know, it's about going out and doing stuff, going to work, you know, that kind of thing. And how was that growing up? Because, you know, we have that societally, but you've also had that in your family, being, you know, your mum and sisters being generators and manifesting generators.
The thing is, like, my mom is very spiritual, so she always like really consciously tried her best with like giving us space to develop our own personality. And when we were younger and we saw fairies or like supportive angelic energy or whatever, she wasn't telling us like that doesn't exist. She always encouraged us to believe into our intuition and everything. And I think I was 11 when I've done my first Reiki course with her. So I grew up with like in a very supporting and loving environment, but I always felt that my sisters were just busier and having like much more friends than I had. Like that was something, especially the middle one. She always had like heaps of people, and until today, she's a magnet. I'm not sure, but she might have a lot of tribal circuitry. And she always had heaps of people and so many people who wanted things from her, and she was always so busy with everyone. And even when I was younger, I've always liked to have more, I think, space and a little bit calmer areas. And when I think back more 101s, of course, when I started to be a teenager, I've tried to like establish myself in groups and having like that certain way you show up and people see you. It was always an issue of mine, that fear of not being seen. But I've always had a lot of 101s.
So you found naturally that you've always been more interested in one-on-one connections than big group interactions.
It's more meaningful. It doesn't happen often that you have like deep conversations in a group setting. And when I was a teenager, I started friends having like telling me, oh, you're so different, you're always, you know, like so mature in your way of thinking, and I think that's like the moment when I felt that there is something different.
I had a feeling like I was different when I was a kid, and then I remember looking around at people and I was like, well, if I'm different and I'm different to all of them, then they must all be the same. And then I looked around, I'm like, well, they don't even look all the same as each other. So everyone's different, you know. And I sort of like, as a kid, I was like, well, of course I'm different, right? But definitely, it definitely seemed that my experience was a different experience to, you know, joining in games in the playground, or, you know, those kind of things that kids do in a group, right? As you're coming up. How was your experience at school? How was it to be a student at school?
Yeah, for me, I think for me it was always very important to be good enough. This is also like one of the big things which are still following me. And I would say, more a quiet student. I was always good in school. I'm not sure how interested I was, but as an older sister, you have to, you know, like establish a good someone to, you know, look up to. And that's something I've always, I think, tried to be. And I don't think that I had a hard time in school. I would just go because I had to go. It was not,
Right.
I was refusing it a lot. It was just something I had to do, so I did it.
Yep.
Yeah, I think I never had like this big problem with school. I would just go.
You just went along. Yeah.
And because I wanted to be good enough, I had always like this more higher goals to live up to that.
Do you think that you know, because our theme obviously is success as projectors, our not self theme is bitterness. How did you experience those? Because I know for me at school, I was like, I always had this feeling like I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I wanted it to be different to what other people did. And I knew I wanted to be really good at it. That was sort of like, I want to be successful at what I do.
Very, very much. Like, I think in school itself, it was, I always liked to be good, but when I started my apprenticeship, I was a nerd. I was having like always kind of top grades, while in school I was nerd but I was the nerd who went with the cool kids to go to party afterwards. So I was living like, when I was in school, I was always like very focused. I was doing a very good job because I wanted to be like really good in it. And it finally made sense. In school, it didn't really make sense because, I mean, who is using geometry in life? I mean, a bit of math, of course, you need a bit of crafts and a bit of writing and talking skills. But when I've started my apprenticeship, when I had that one day a week I had school, I really saw the value for my life, the value for my work. And this is where I really started to thrive because it made sense. It made sense to really learn what I was doing. And
what was your apprenticeship? What were you doing?
I was in hospitality.
Yeah.
It's quite an overall education in hospitality. Usually you do it in a hospital or in an elderly's home. It's from the whole gastronomy with service and with kitchen. It's also cleaning, it's laundry, it's a bit of administration, a bit of organization. So it's a quite wide thing. All our skills you can use in your life. Like when I came home and told my mom, you can't wash, like 30-degree stuff with 60-degree stuff, and you have to separate colors. And she was like, then you can do it by yourself.
I had to learn that there were different sizes of duvets, like you've got king size and queen size and double size, and they're all different, and then the duvet covers have to match the right size for the duvet, otherwise. And this was like mind-blowing to me when I first found out.
Yeah, so it was a very practical thing and something that will be with me. And I was always very fascinated about food. When I was a kid, I would always watch cooking shows, like even as a 10-12-year-old, before I
this is super interesting, the food thing, because do you know there's the Incarnation cross that we both share. We both have a different version of the cross of explanation. It always keeps talking about the importance of food in that Incarnation cross. I don't know if your version actually mentions it, but I'm hoping Raluca can pull it up for us so we can see the Incarnation cross. So we both have the same four gates, right? For the sun, earth, and conscious and unconscious. But I think, is yours 43, your conscious sun gate?
Yeah, I think so.
So mine's 49. So I have it on the gate of revolution.
Okay, yeah.
And you have it on the gate 43 up there in the Ajna.
Yes.
So we're gonna we'll have a look in a moment anyway, and have a look at your Incarnation cross. But
I haven't heard that it's very food related, the Incarnation cross.
Yeah. I think it's to do with I think we mentioned it with Raluca, that channel down there, that tribal channel down there, the 1949, I think it is, between the spleen and the root and the emotional center. But anyways, so we can come back to that. So what was the moment like? Your friend said, let's look you up. She said, I'm a projector. Then you found out you're a projector. We're not here to work. We're here to wait for invitation. We experience bitterness. How was that when you first found that out?
I think it was a big relief, like a moment of being able to breathe and having an explanation of that. We just are different. Like, I think throughout my working life, I was really working as a generator. I was always working in a very active way. I've always worked in gastronomy for over 10 years. So I was always like being very, very active, which was physical active, but I was always like, mainly after my apprenticeship, I went into a management position. So it was always part-time physical and part-time more mental work, but I was always working 5 days a week. But I've always had to quit and left for traveling. So I've always needed these breaks. The first time I was 22 when I quit my job, and I was traveling for 8 months. And since then, I've never stopped. I've always had these big breaks. I came back to work more as a generator, more as a keep on going, until I felt that I needed a break. And this is when I left.
It's interesting. I've got a friend who's a projector who's very industrious, and he was talking about, you know, this thing of like coming back home, working hard, topping up with funds, and then going off traveling again. So I don't know if it's a projector thing, but it's interesting to, you know, and this is the cool thing about talking to people like we're talking now. We get to sort of say, well, do you think this is a pattern? Do you think that's because you're a projector, or do you just think it's just how you are? Or do you think, you know, so yeah, like this thing about how if you're a generator and you find something that you just love to do, you can just keep on going, and there's no,
because you never run out of energy if you're a generator.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's like hey, I can go all day because this charges me up, and I enjoy it.
Yeah, and in my chart there are a lot of hints of like that, just going too far with my energy level. And when I've got my reading done, he said that I have to be very careful to not burn out, because yeah, like the gate of saying yes, and like just like that, I have to be very careful to not burn out.
Maybe we can have a little look at your chart, and we'll come back to the Raluca's got the Incarnation crosses.
Yes.
We'll come back to those in a moment. So although maybe should we have a look now? Raluca, maybe you could just zoom in a little bit on that one. So this is mine. This is the right angle cross of explanation. Yes. On Sungate 49.
Yes.
Providing food plays a large role in this cross, and you have the drive that gets us to take action to provide for our body's need to be nourished. So that's on the 49.
That's beautiful.
You're on the 43. That's just a part of it.
Yeah, sure.
Now, does yours mention food?
No, it doesn't.
Have a look.
It's that one.
It might be the only cross of explanation where it doesn't mention food. But this is an interesting thing.
It's a very short text. I mean.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing that, you know, obviously, if it's a right angle cross, there's 4 different versions. Whereas if it's a left angle, there's 2 versions. Okay. And for the 4 ones, the juxtaposition, there's only 1 of each. But I often enjoy looking at the different ones that are the same 4 gates in a different order. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, so what's it like? How is it different if the person's a 43? And because it's text, it's not instantly obvious what the difference is, you know.
Yeah.
But I think generally it's the same energy, but depending on, like, for example, yours is anchored in on the Sungate 43, which is insight.
Mm-hmm. It's more about the information and less about the physical nourishment.
Is that how it feels?
I especially when I read the text, for me, it was always like, I remember the first time I was cooking for my family. And yes. I was maybe 12 years old, and I was saying, "My mom, I'm hungry," and she was out in the garden and talking with friends and working in the garden, and she was like, "Then go and make food." I was like, "How should I do food?" Yeah? And she explained me the steps, and when they came and they've ate my food, I felt like I'm able to provide for my family. And since then, I've always enjoyed gather people over food, because you have a lot of talking, and I like to work with someone while prepare the food, and it's such a beautiful process of creating something. I think that's one of the places I'm very creative.
Maybe we'll have a little get together sometime, because Pascal's cross of explanation, I think she might be either 23 or 43, and you know, there's a few of us around, so it'd be interesting to look and compare, because you know, mine is on gate 49, so that's all about revolution, but that's tribal and emotional, whereas the 43 is a death gate, as you may know.
Yeah.
And that's the gate of insight, which, and the cool thing, of course, with Cross of Explanation, it has this channel 2343, the freak to genius channel, also known as the pure projector channel, which is it allows us to communicate our individuality, our individual insights. It's all about that individual mutative energy that can see things and explain things in a new way, whereas my gate is on I'm not emotional, so it's a hanging gate, my sun gate, whereas yours, obviously, the energy can move
True.
up and down. Yeah. Maybe we'll have a little look at your chart so everyone else can see it, because the three of us have all seen your chart, but for people watching, we can we'll find that in just a second. So how is that channel? How do you experience that channel of structuring the freak to genius?
I've always liked to organize. When I like to have problems, and I like to solve them. For example, when I moved to Austria, and this year I've started to work in the store of my boyfriend. It's a crystal, jewelry, gemstones, minerals, big pieces store, which he hasn't really worked in last year, and there were like a lot of different influences, and I loved coming in and like making in a logical order.
Right. Like structuring the crystals into something that makes sense,
making it understanding for everyone, and like bringing like some like a frame where everyone can work in. I love that. I love that. Yeah, definitely.
Fantastic. So okay, here's your chart. I mean, I definitely empathize with wanting to bring order amongst chaos and creating things in some kind of structure. But I'm Swiss as well, so I don't know if that may have something to do with it.
Yeah, probably. It definitely works into the same.
We have that reputation. So one thing that's interesting. So you have three defined channels.
All individual.
Right. So they're all in the individual circuitry. So that's very, very interesting. So we've got the 2343, we've got the 6124, and those connect the ajna down to the throat and up to the head. I don't know if we can zoom in a little bit, Raluca, but maybe we could have a little closer look there. We're trying a new way of doing this with Raluca controlling the screen and doing it that way. So now we know they're individual. For anyone that isn't aware of which is which, the individual channels always go down the middle. Yeah. So if there's three channels, it's always the middle one that's individual. And then of course down at the bottom, so you and I both have the 2343, and then down a bit lower, you've got the 2838, which is the channel of struggle. Yeah. Which again is all about, it's got the fighter, and that's gate 38, and gate 39, the gate of provocation. We have a lot of the same gates. Right, so that's another death gate. So you're aware that are you aware of having these three death gates?
Semi-aware, I would say.
So we've got the 43 on the ajna, that's part of a channel.
Yeah.
Then we've got that's up at the top there. We've got and then down the bottom, they're both on the root, pointing towards the two awareness centers. So they're on either side, the 38 and the 39.
Okay. And
those two are actually in opposition to each other. So 38 and 39 are on opposite sides of the I Ching. So that's something that's of interest, can be of interest. But the idea with these gates is that for their function to work correctly, you're not supposed to be listening to other people at the same time as whatever they're trying to get you to do, right? Yeah. So let's take the gate of provocation, gate 39. So the idea of that gate is that we're here to kind of, maybe challenge people, or just by being ourselves. And it's not designed to look for approval. You know, it's not, how can you provoke someone effectively in a way that needs to happen if, you know, you do a little bit of provoking, and then you know, you go over there and you check, oh, was that okay for that person? Did they get too upset? Oh, maybe I shouldn't provoke them so much, or I should provoke them a bit more. Or it's not designed to be adjusted to make other people feel comfortable. It's just, it is what it is. It's the gate of provocation. And I don't know about you, but I've noticed when I meet people with the 55, the gate of spirit opposite, either we go really well or it doesn't work at all. That's my experience.
I've never checked that.
Well, look out for it and get back. That's the. Do you find yourself? Do you find that other people get provoked around you? That you have that, like? I just sometimes like I'll start saying something and there's this voice in my head maybe saying, maybe you shouldn't say that, and then the words have already come out of my mouth.
I think it started in school when I was always asking questions where the teachers didn't like them. And like right now, with having a more spiritual approach to world, for example, the family of my partner, they're Christians, and I feel that it offends them sometimes a bit because I have a different belief system. And yeah, I can totally see that. I'm very good in like, but I'm also a Scorpio, you know, like this thing. I think it goes very good hand in hand, like provoking and having like this thing. So I think in my past I would say it's more a Scorpio thing than it's a gate 39 thing.
Right. Okay. Well, we might even have a look and see. Maybe we'll come back to your chart in a moment and look and see. You know, we can look at the mandala and see where Scorpio is and see if you know, you have many gates activated in Scorpio. And then the other gates, the other death gates. Would you like me to say a little more about the other two gates?
Please.
Cool. So your 43 is that's obviously designed to be telling people, you know, just when it's the thing with this channel, this 2343, is its timing is everything, and that's why it's the freak to genius.
Yeah.
Because when your timing's good, it's like, you know, your insight gets communicated, it gets received, people hear you, they're like, wow, you're amazing, you know, and then if your timing's off, they're like looking at you like, I hope I'm going to move over here in case I catch that weird thing you've got, you know. And I don't know if you can see, but can you see how with the I Ching that Raluca's showing us there, just Raluca, just go back on that same one. Can you see how the 23 and the 43, can you see the I Ching symbols to the left of those numbers? And you can see they're the opposite, right? So the 23 has 1 yang line and then 5 yin, and the 43 has 1 yin and then 5 yang. So those are the opposite of each other. So you can see why it's an interesting energy, you know, they're opposite each other. But of course, you know, it's interesting because it does need to be invited. But then when you the way I feel it, and this is coming to me now, is like when I start explaining something, like right now, like I'm in the death gates. I'm not here thinking, like, of course, at some point I'll go, okay, I want to ask you another question. I'll come back to that. But right now I'm like, okay, I want to explain this, and I'm connecting with the concepts in an individual way. There's no space in that for me to be connecting with you. I mean, of course we're connected, but you see what I mean? It's like right now I'm about those ideas and communicating them. And I'm not listening and going, you know, whereas at other times I might be looking very closely at you and, you know, listening more. And then of course the gate 38 is the fighter, and that's probably it's one of the most individual gates, and it's really about sticking up for yourself and standing up for what you believe in. And you know, obviously, you know, that's about knowing yourself. It's about your individuality, and it's not about listening to, you know, do people like me, or will I be approved of, or it's like, nah, fuck all that. You know, I'm me, and I'm going to stand up for myself. And that, I guess, for me, that was a real relief to find that, because I you know, I'd been spending a lot of my time being nice or something like that. You know.
Yeah, and you see, like the 38 is activated 3 times in my
right. It's strong, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they're all in the first line.
What's the meaning of first line?
The first line is the investigator, but there are different keynotes for each of the gates. So I might I don't know if I can do it while we're on. Maybe we'll come back to it and we'll explore that a bit more. But so 38 in the first line, if you each of the different gates has 6 different flavors according to which line it's activated on. So it would be interesting to look that up at some stage, but I can't do it while we're on the call because
no worries.
Connection. So okay, so how is the splenic authority? What's your experience of splenic authority?
I am aware that, for example, when I was traveling and I was only responsible for myself, I was a lot more in my body because I was more in nature. I was more able to listen to it. But when you look at my chart and I have like this huge head definition, it's very easy for me to just get stuck in my head. Like for me, I'm like big overthinker, and I've seen other people and they would just do things. They would be able just to create something, and I would be so long in my head that I would in the end come to the conclusion that I don't have enough knowledge or enough skills to actually, you know, fulfill what I wanted to do, because I want to do it good, and so I don't do anything at all.
So you maybe talk yourself out of something, or you'd
so often,
or yeah, okay.
So often. So I know that when I'm centered and when I'm in my body, I do feel my spleen with good intuition coming, but there is that split second, and then my head is there, and because I think I've spent a lot of much more time in my head than with my spleen, it's sometimes really hard to have trust and faith in my splenic intuition.
Yeah, it's a quiet. What you're saying really fits with, you know, it being a quiet voice, and you know, the ajna is a lot louder, and the emotional center is even louder.
Yeah.
Which, even if it's not defined, you can still be getting those kind of signals from the people, you know, from connections and from the gates that you've got activated. Raluca's saying she resonates with talking yourself out of things. I mean, she's got the gate of doubt up at the top, which she's been learning how to use that for the collective rather than the individual. You heard about that part.
Yes.
So that's that gate 63.
But I think, sorry if I interrupt you, but you know, because when my spleen says something, my mind reacts on it. So I think being aware of the reaction will make me more aware of the spleen, even though the mind is louder, but it will always go against what my spleen was saying.
Do you have an example? It sounds juicy. What's a decision that you've recently made where you felt this kind of like, no, my mind says I shouldn't do that, or I should do that, but then the spleen's like,
No, it's more than when I'm in flow, and like there is an opportunity, and my spleen says yes, because it's an exciting thing to do, and it feels good. But then my mind doubts it and comes like with all the risk it would be, and like I think if I go with my spleen, it's a very exposed way of living, because it's very natural, it's very raw, it has maybe a lot of provoking for others. So and I think my mind just tries to like make me more smooth and like go into that world we're living in.
It's like living life without a safety net, isn't it? That
Yeah.
state of surrender, of just like, I don't know what's going to happen. I know whatever's going to happen, it's going to happen.
But while traveling, I think I've got a bit more bold, and there is what I really like experienced following my spleen.
Right. Okay.
For
Got
example,
it.
I was I think 22 when I went the first time to India.
Uh-huh.
I was traveling by myself. I got hosted 2 times by strangers, which felt really nice. And then I was in a place where for me the accommodation was just too expensive. And I was like, okay, tomorrow I'm gonna leave. And then was this guy, and he said, you know, I usually stay with this old woman, and you can have a bed there. And for me, it was yes. Even though he was an Indian guy, and I mean, I'm alone in India, and there are pretty bad stories from India. And so I went with him, and we went further than I thought he mentioned before. And then I've started worrying. And I was like,
sure.
Dude, where are we going? And he was like, you know, I've rescheduled. We're going to go home to my parents.
He didn't tell you?
No.
Okay.
And in my mind, I was freaking out. But I knew that there is no way to make a scene now, because I wouldn't even know the way home, the way to somewhere else. So I knew I had to go with that trust I had before. And in the end, I've stayed there a week. I've spent 2 or 3 days only with his stepmother, which only spoke Hindi, and she was making me a suit, a Punjabi, like an Indian dress, and I was helping her in the kitchen and making chapati and making her bracelets, because I was doing some macrame. And that was like some moment where the initial feeling was yes, go for it, and the further we went, the doubts came louder, and the scarcity mindset and everything. And I went through it with it because I've trusted that first gut feeling I had, and it ended up being a wonderful experience.
So that was an invitation, wasn't it? It was to go and yeah.
It was a literal invitation.
Right.
And my spleen said yes, and then it got a bit scary. Where it could have happened. I mean, bad things could have happened, but I've had faith in my gut feeling, and it never. I think I was never wrong throughout my travels, and I've traveled basically all the time alone over 2 years in a lot of Asian and South American places, and Africa even. And I've always been very carried by my environment, by the people, by trusting my spleen or my gut, or however you want to call it. Or like
yeah. It's an interesting thing. I find like splenic authority is quite an interesting one, because it's like everything you read says that the spleen only ever says no, and then I'm like, how does this work? But then I feel like, you know, if I trust it, it's like, well, if I'm going to do something really stupid, I think my spleen will hopefully let me know if I listen.
There is a no.
So as long as I'm paying attention, as long as I'm listening, as long as I'm alert, as long as I'm awake, then I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of like, well, I guess I can kind of do what I want. You know, it's like, it's a yes until it's not a yes.
Maybe we're so used to the no that when there is not a no, it feels like a yes, because there isn't this working against.
Yeah, maybe. I guess the times when I really feel it is like if I'm kite surfing and the wind's blowing offshore, or it's dangerous, or like yesterday I had an interesting incident with my boat, where I had to jump off a bridge to get onto my boat. So I was kind of hanging off the railings and thinking, can I fall? And I was like, yeah, I can. There was nothing that said no, don't do it. So I was like, okay, we'll do it. And it was cold, so I didn't want to fall in the river, right?
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, but I think those extreme situations, the mind can be quieter. Whereas, for me personally, I find those things quite easy, under pressure,
Yeah.
and in a situation. Whereas, just everyday life, or where do I go? Where am I going to go for the winter? Or, just questions of like, then it's like, well, I guess I'll just end up doing whatever I do.
Yeah.
But it's cool. It's interesting that you notice that when you're connected in the flow, that it's much easier to hear than when you're. Yeah.
And I think, yeah, it's all about that. Like, it's not only the spleen that I feel more, but I feel more invitations. I feel more moments when I have these genius moments where I meet people and I touch them, and they have such a big, impactful experience for their life.
Okay, you got to say more about that. Give me tell. Have you got a good story to go with that? This sounds juicy. Probably when you're traveling, right?
It's back in India.
What's that?
It's back in India as
in
well.
India, okay.
But it was 2 years ago, and I was going through a very rough breakup. I was doing my second Vipassana. Vipassana is a 10-day silent meditation retreat with 2 meals a day and get up at 4:30 in the morning. It's very intense. It's about 11 hours of meditation a day, but it's very profound to experience. And after that, I went to Goa, and I was working in a hostel and a work away thing. And one day I've met this Indian guy, and I felt this connection, and we started talking, and I was reading Baba Ramdas that time. It's a guy, I think he was American, the guy who started with the LSD experiences and ended up with a guru in India. And the overall message for me was, you have to be your own guru. Everything else will never work, because the only thing you can actually rely on is your own truth. So I was very much in that flow, in that energy, that groundedness, like going through a rough time, but like finding my way to go through. And we were talking, and I'm not sure if we've done like I was touching his hands, and we do some energy exchange, and I just felt like how he like really expanded, it was like such a burst of energy, and he started crying, like literally like tears running down his face. And I mean, we were there outside of the hostel where a lot of other people were as well, and India is not really the culture where men show their weakness or like their soft spot, and he was literally crying there, and I was aligned with myself, and I was like just going with my words and my energy, and his experience, because the timing was right, everything was right, was so beautiful and so nourishing for him, and in the end for me as well. Yeah.
Nice. That sounds amazing. Yeah,
for sure.
Let's talk a little about your profile. So you're a 2-4 profile. So it's the hermit opportunist. So how does that show up? You mentioned at school that you were coming up, that you felt like your own, you didn't enjoy as much sort of social activity as other people. But how is it for you now?
Very often when I have been in big groups of people, I come back and say, I just don't like people, like in general, like massive. It's just, it just doesn't serve me. It's, I think when I'm a bit further away from it, I really like to watch a situation. But when I'm and I can like be very like observative and stuff, but when I'm too much in it, like right now working in the market, it's very it's very intense being within this energy all day. And even at my work in the crystal shop, but there I have a lot of stones to like adjust a bit. But and also in social situations, I like to go, but today I know now it's enough, and then I just go home. We have a bar that is also in like next to the shop, and we live above. So and so often my boyfriend would just stay much longer, and I think he's just like he's just surfing of this sacred bus vibe of all the generators, and he himself is enjoying it even as a projector. And for me, it's just like I get to that point where it's just too exhausting, and then I have to go. And I think today I'm mature enough to don't like exceed it too much. Of course, sometimes I'm in a situation where it's like would be very unsocial just to leave, and then I would stay. But very often I'm honest enough with me to leave these situations.
And how do you find so there's that timing of, right, go back to your own space. So how do you find the fourth line, the opportunist?
I think I haven't really tried to understand it enough. I've heard that like in this gatherings you find your opportunities to do something, and when I think back into my business life, I can see that. For example, we had a course in one day, and in the evening there were some of our big bosses there, and they had some drinks with us as well. And I was talking to my big boss, and that I would go traveling. I've just quit my job. I'm gonna go traveling for a few months. And he was like, and overall through the conversation, he was like, but you're a very good person. We need people like you in our company. So he gave me his card and told me that whenever I'm back from traveling, I should give him a call. And he would make sure that, you know, there would be some opportunities. So that's
perfect.
Exactly that.
Yeah, perfect. Networking, just like, that connection. I mean, it's interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
And this is actually like, I came back from traveling, I gave him a call, and in the end, this is how I got my next job.
Yeah, that's kind of sounds pretty textbook fourth line to me.
Fourth line, and waiting for and having the invitation and going with it, and like having a good experience. Yeah.
I mean, also that story you told in India, the story about being invited to come and go and stay with the mother. It's like that sort of family network of connection of that, and then you also mentioned helping your previous boyfriend, I think it was, and your father, just with the markets.
Yeah, right now I work with my father on the markets, and it's my current boyfriend who has the crystal store, which usually throughout the year I work with him.
Right. So, but again, it's that connection of someone that you know who
completely
does that. Yeah, cool. And then there's the second line, which is like, now fuck off and leave me alone sometimes. Like, I just want to be in my own space. Do you feel that way, or?
Yeah, I think it's a good balance. You know, you can go out and have an environment where you are with people, you are social, and you get opportunities through it. And you also get to know yourself good enough and be aware when it's time to leave.
That's the key, isn't it? Knowing that time and getting it right. And I don't know about you, but I find if I miss the timing, it gets harder and harder. You know, it's like, it's like, when you think, oh, I shouldn't be here anymore, but I'm still here. And then it's like, oh, damn, I've done that for like 5 minutes. Oh, now I've done it for half an hour.
And then you start to be like very trapped in that situation, and you're just thinking like how, and you're not even with the people anymore because you're like, you're like, why am I still
where's
here?
the door? How can I get out? Classic.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I wonder. I think at some point we're going to talk some generators, because it's,
Yeah.
you know, I I don't know, like, because I've got generator friends who are pretty hermit as well. You know, they're like, nah, I don't like doing small talk, and
For sure.
so it will be interesting, and I suspect it probably depends on the quality of the energy, because I remember going to a New Year's Eve celebration, and I was, you know, it was like you're supposed to be having a great time,
Yeah.
and there's all these people who are, I think some of them might have been having a great time, but everyone was making out like they were having a great time. And I was just exhausted. And I was like, the last thing I wanted to do was go in the middle of all those people. Like, nah. And so I just sort of, yeah, it just didn't, it was draining. So, but I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe if there was a bunch of people who are really, you know, grounded and connected and, you know, in tune with their own energies, it might be a really blissful experience to dive into a party full of generators and be in the
I
middle of
think
all that energy.
that's a problem when the energy is not right. A lot of us are very sensitive, and they start to balance that out or try to, just because we can't really not do it. Like I'm totally a fixer. I'm a problem fixer.
Mm-hmm.
People who have problems, like when I was younger, my ex-boyfriends were always like very troubled kids.
Okay.
Like needed guidance and needed love and care and support and like grounding, and yeah. And so there is with situations, like when I see situations who have nothing to do with me, but I just come across them, and suddenly I feel that I have to get involved, but I shouldn't, because, you know, but sometimes even a situation can invite you.
Well, let's experiment to have you got an example of a situation inviting you?
No. Still looking for it. But no, I mean, of course there is environmental structures who invite you to do things just because the opportunities are laid out.
You've got an example?
Yeah, let's say on Facebook it's posted a certain gathering, but no one invited me personally. But the situation feels right, I would go. And it wasn't and someone who was inviting me, but it was
Right.
but someone
Facebook suggested that the event was happening.
Yeah.
Facebook invited me. The algorithm invited me.
Yeah, I think it's like one of these informal invitations, which life is just offering you opportunities.
Interesting. Sometimes I'll say, "Oh well, I'm not. I'm just going while I'm waiting. I'm going to do this thing while I'm waiting."
Yeah, because I think for me the worst thing that I experience is like that feeling of being stuck. And when I'm sitting at home and I'm alone and there is not much energy around, I can easily fall into that trap. And when I'm outside and when I move myself, or when I go from one place to another, just with being in flow because I move creates opportunities. So for me, like doing things really brings me out of this fear of being stuck.
Are you familiar with the Melancholy gates?
Do I have it?
Well, every single individual gate has a melancholy aspect to it. So I'm gonna go through some of them, and you might find this really useful. especially for someone who's got all the individual circuitry, right? So I don't know if Raluca, do you have this document somewhere? Do you want me to send it to you?
I think I have it. Just a second.
Yeah, we can go through them. Let's do the 2343 because we talked about that that channel already. So actually, let's start at the top. So 61, right at the very top.
Yes.
In the head center. Melancholy over lack of inspiration. We can send you a copy of this if you like.
Yeah, please.
It's kind of handy. Okay, gate 24. Melancholy over no resolution and therefore no inner silence. So you were saying earlier about your mind being sometimes very loud when you can't hear your you're like, can you shut up for a minute? I'm trying to listen to the spleen here. I can't hear what the spleen's trying to say. Or what the spleen said. Melancholy, this is gate 43 now. Melancholy over inefficiency. Gate 23 is frustration over not being able to explain oneself clearly.
Oh, yeah, I do feel that one.
Gate 49. Emptiness leading to potential eating disorder. Sorry, no, absolutely, that's not an individual. Gate 49 is not an individual gate, is it? That's 55. Here we go. Raluca's got the diagram. So what else have we got? We've got 28 and 38, and we've also got 10. So 10 is melancholy that no one else knows how to behave.
That's a good one.
28, life is devoid of purpose. 38 is not knowing what to fight for. You're gonna like 39. 39 is not knowing whom to provoke. And what else have you got in individual circuitry? I think that's it. Oh, you've got gate 1, of course.
Oh, yeah. Not being seen as being different.
Yeah, melancholy about not being seen as being different. That resonates a bit with the story you were saying earlier about your friend saying, "Oh, you're different."
The fun thing that 10 melancholy that no one else knows how to behave is something that comes like very, very intense during my teen years. When I told you that my friend always said, like, you're so mature, and that's like totally that, like me, like being the only mature person in the room and the only one who like try to, when parents are at home, that we have to be a bit more quiet because otherwise we're going to get thrown out.
Like, come on, kids.
Is trying to like silence them a bit. Very interesting.
Yeah, or maybe Raluca can send you a copy of that.
Yeah.
I'm looking at your Scorpio here. I've got the mandala on my computer here. I don't know if Raluca has that option to show us the rave mandala, but so you've got both Plutos, gate 1 and gate 44. You've got Mars on gate 28, and you've got, I think it's Mercury, and of course the Sun on gate 43.
Yeah.
So you've got 5 gate activations in Scorpio.
Yeah.
You seem to be quite bunched. So, for example, I don't know my astrology so well, so I don't know exactly what all this means. But we can see that. Have you looked at the mandala where it's like the rays all coming in from the outside?
No, I haven't actually.
Okay, if you, I think it's free on my body graph. So, I don't know if Raluca has that. I thought it was free, but I'm not sure if
your picture is frozen. Oh, no, you're good.
Oh, that's because I was. Oh, there we go. Perfect. So this is showing you the gate.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Something with the sound because it keeps clicking.
Okay.
Maybe try get rid of the headphones and see if we can hear
Let's
you.
say that now.
Yeah, let's see. Maybe now you need to talk a bit louder.
I'll speak up. Or I'll get really close like this. So here it is. So we can see the different gates around the side, and then we can see what's the colors obviously match up with the centers.
Yeah.
And this is a great diagram for seeing when you have repeated gate activation. So if we look at the, just like say 11:30 at the top left, gate 38, you can see the 3 different activations there on that one gate.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can start to see some things there. I mean, what's interesting is that you have of your splenic. See, most of the splenic gate activations are all in Libra, but you've got the only 2 that are not in Libra, which is the 28 and the 44, just after Libra in Scorpio.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, Libra is all about Libra is the spleen, 18, 48, 57, 32, and 50 over on the right there.
Yeah.
But that's all white for you. So anyway, this is a fun diagram to explore. I can look at these for hours and hours, just like checking out, right, where's that and how does that, okay, and that's, so I'm still learning.
Yeah, I mean, it's so much to learn. There's so much different aspects of it.
How do you find you learn? What's your learning style? You've obviously researched a fair few things already.
I think in general, I'm good in visual, but like over sound as well. I think one of the nicest things is to listen and make notes, because I like to have the sound and then, but I need to do something with my hand to keep focus on the sound. But it's good to have a sound, because when I listen to something, it's harder for my mind to wander than when I only read.
It can keep you here. The listening. Yeah. Cool.
So rather, if I only read, it's very easy, like to like just slip away.
Yep.
So I like that combination.
It's good that you have that awareness of where your presence is, and you have that awareness of when it sounds like you could have a good awareness of what your mind's doing, and that's a great tool for dealing with the not self. That's great to have that awareness.
I think so.
Yeah. Hey, I found the first line on my advanced thing on my body graph here. So it's the gate 38.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the first line 3 times.
Yeah.
First line is qualification. So the keynote is tempering opposition based on the circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting because we've got the gate, which is the fighter, the gate of opposition, but it's kind of like tempering opposition based on the circumstances. So it sounds a little bit strategic, maybe knowing which battles to fight, which ones to walk away from. So it's not just fighting everything all the time.
It's not just an active fighting. It's more a being aware of and just act when it's needed.
Especially for a projector, right, with energy limitations, that you don't want to just fight everything all the time. It's like, okay, well, is this the one I want to take a stand on? Is this something that's really important? Is this so with Neptune, a psychic attunement that guarantees proper action, the psychic gift of knowing when and how to fight. So that's Neptune that you have twice on there. Mars, you don't have Mars on there, but Mars is in detriment, which is the tendency to oppose as a general rule, the drive to fight as a general rule. So it's like Mars is trying to make this gate just fight the whole time, which makes sense.
Typical Bailey energy.
Just like Mars,
The warrior.
Whereas Neptune has a bit more wisdom, and it's got that insight that goes with it, the psychic gift, knowing when and how to fight. So I just got that off my advanced one here, so I was able to get it while we were I think I've got it saved offline, that one. So cool. Do you have any other questions about other aspects on your chart, or anything else you want to explore here, or tell us how you experience it?
Maybe you can share some of your insights about the environment, because that's something I came across like later on, like that I'm markets, and that it's like the last of the urban environment. No, I'm kitchen, so it's last of the urban environments, and maybe you have some insights there.
Well, when I had my second part of my reading with John Martin, I said to him, "Oh, do you think I've been happy here in Colorado? Because I'm valleys wide and I can look out and see these mountains and there's a big valley." And he laughed at me and he just said, "Dunstan, you take it with you. It's an inner thing." He said, "You take it with you wherever you go anyway." I'm paraphrasing. I haven't listened to the recording of it yet, but he was basically like, "Look, don't worry about all that so much. Just live your life." So that's the only insight that I have to offer.
Okay, because like when I've read that I'm kitchen, and because like this food, this providing thing, and also with my family, we always had like good kitchens where you can sit like in an open kitchen, living room space, and right now I do have that as well. So I've always like enjoyed that, like that gathering area. No, but I think
it sounds like it's like that's a space where as a hermit you can invite people, that they're gathering people around. I could feel that when you were sharing it.
And it's safe. I always preferred having people over than going out.
Well, when you're out, you don't know what kind of energies are going to be flying around, do you?
Yes, and when I invite people, I mean, even they can be in a bad mood, but then it's a very limited number of people.
Yeah. How do you experience these open centers, and are you aware of not self stuff that happens with those open centers? You talked a little bit earlier about the fact of living as a generator in certain times.
I think from my ego, like the overcommitment.
Keep it
like
making
especially like only when it involves others. But like when it involves others, I am very overcommitting myself. Like the saying yes, even though I know it's too much, but just because I feel
so in the moment that it's going to be too much, or is it that you realize soon after, or is it like you're aware as you're promising?
And I know that, and the thing is that I know it's not because of me. I say yes because of the other. And because I want to meet their expectations, and not because of me. I think in the ego, I really feel it for sure. With
do you have an example? I think it'd be really useful for people to hear. I noticed you just got Simran joining as well, and when she saw your chart, she felt a lot of resonance. She's a 2-4 as well.
Yeah.
You've probably seen her interview, so.
Yeah. It's really hard to get you an example right now. But just no, I don't. No. But for the Chi center, for me especially, when I see body crops which are colored in, that always attracts me. I don't really have a lot of experience with, I think, defined G centers, but I just know when I see it, it always attracts me. And with the solar plexus, I'm not quite sure. I mean, I was always a very emotional person. Like everyone knows, I'm built quite nearby the river, so I start to cry easily. I'm very emotional. I used to be more reserved with my anger, but over the last years I've allowed myself to even live anger as an emotion. So I think that's one thing I was very confused in the beginning, because I thought that, you know, like when you're a very emotional person, that must be a defined center. But for me, I do have 3 activations, but
yeah, you've got gate 6, which is conflict, the gate of friction.
yeah.
You know, you've actually got 4 activations because you've got 49. You've got at least
Yeah,
4,
double.
49 twice, right? So, so you've got you know, you've got conflict, you've got revolution, and gate 30 apparently is called the clinging fire, the gate of feelings. Freedom recognized as an illusion and limitation accepted as a fate. I mean, that's pretty heavy.
Yeah.
Freedom's an illusion, and the limitations, you just got to accept them. Wow.
Well, our body and the small consciousness we actually have does give us a lot of limitation to, I think, the source we came from. But yeah, that was something that I thought that must have been an activated center. But yeah.
I was quite similar. Obviously, I have no definition on the emotional center, and I'm someone who cries easily. I feel things, and what was really powerful for me was when I realized that, sure, I've got some of my own stuff going on there. You know, I've got a few. I think I've got 3 gates activated as well.
Yeah.
But then realizing, actually, a lot of the time, it's not my stuff that I'm feeling.
Yeah.
So when I was at that New Year's Eve experience and I felt like a bit blue, you know, I felt a bit depressed, or melancholy, as I prefer to call it. What if I was amplifying what was there and feeling it more intensely? And what if other people can feel it more intensely? So the open emotional center can go into a room, and sure, there may be some of their stuff, but you walk in and then all of a sudden it amplifies and projects up onto the wall for everyone to see the stuff that's already there.
Yeah.
So the stuff that could be hidden. Yeah. Does that fit?
The craziest thing, I think, for me was that immense sadness. I had years of crying every day, and I was sure that not all of it was mine. I was sure. But I was crying every day. And in the end of my first ayahuasca ceremony, I was crying, but like the sadness of the world, not mine. The whole world's sadness. That was something I was always like feeling, and like, yeah, especially in these years where I've cried every day, I knew that not all of it was mine. That was a very, very crazy experience. And I was 20 when that started.
Right.
When I felt this internal sadness, which was like from somewhere else. And it felt like I would just be able to let it out, while others maybe are not able to like process.
Well, whatever you can take with an emotion, you know, however you can process emotions, especially with it, you know, because it's not being connected to anything, then it sounds like a good idea to me to be able to move those energies.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So well, let's maybe we can connect again in some point in the future. It's always really interesting to see how things evolve and how things unfold for people, and but it's been great to hear some of your experience so far, and thank you for sharing, and thank you for just being here on the call. So
yeah, it was very interesting. I was a bit nervous in the beginning, And
And now
especially
you
like
know
2 days ago when I had to write the bio and I was just writing with Raluca, I don't know what to write. No, but it was fun. Thank you.
Good, good, good. Well, you know, by this stage, it's like now you know you should have been nervous, you know.
Yeah,
Now
you
you
know.
everybody's watching.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not even live. You're just recording.
Well, we've got Simran here and Raluca's here live, and
Yeah.
we're recording. And,
Yeah, but you know, like with Raluca, with like writing with her for a few days now, and with watching your videos for a while now, it's not that you have been like complete strangers to me.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's nice. That's nice. It's nice as well to, you know, and this is nice where it's really interesting. It's very different interviewing someone who kind of has watched a few of these and sort of knows. I mean, they're all different, and
Of
each
course.
person's
Very
different, but you know, at least there's some kind of, you know, we try and do it in such a way that there's an invitation from the person to be interviewed, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, rather than just inviting random people or someone who who thinks it's a good idea, you know, it's like, okay, well, you know, what do you enjoy and stuff. So that's Raluca's been doing a great job with that to you know,
Jeez.
connect with people who where there's some energy there. So it always works. That's nice. Yeah. Alrighty. Well, have a sweet day.
Yeah. You too.
And it's nice to be connecting in daytime, isn't it?
Yeah.
Precious daylight hours.
Yeah.
And yeah, for everyone listening, thanks for putting with us, bearing with us with the sound. We will be improving that. And but let's. Have you got much more markets left to go there, Joanna?
Well, Christmas market starts tomorrow until Christmas, and it's gonna be an everyday work, about 6 to 8 hours every day. So it's gonna be an interesting exposure of myself.
We have Christmas markets too here in Bath. So,
But January we will go traveling in Australia for a month. So
nice.
I have a beautiful thing to look forward.
Sounds very similar to my plans. So yeah, maybe I'll see you in Australia.
Go to see the sun.
Yeah, go warm up.
Definitely.
Wonderful. All right. Well, yeah, good to connect, and I'll catch you soon. Enjoy the rest of the markets.
Thank you. Bye, guys.
Bye, Joanna.